So the blocker tie ring's really nice because in any case, but especially if you have a horse that tends to pull back, it allows for the rope, and which I'll show how the rope goes through. It allows for friction so that it doesn't get, the horse doesn't get a full release. They'll be able to back up and start to think about what's happening when they're backing up. Oftentimes the horse will stop because they don't get a release of pressure, or where you've tied them is weak. Something will break, something will become destroyed typically if a horse pulls back. So that's why these are really nice. So you want to make sure that these are clipped to a secure location. And when you clip them, you'll clip them with the tongue facing to the back. Just like, oops, I'll get rid of this. Just like so. There we go. So the tongue's facing to the back. That allows for this to be out of the way. So when you do go to loop your rope through, all you have to do is open that up. It's magnetized. Open that up, slip this through. One loop, okay? And then you take this clip and clip it to, in the case of a rope halter, I like to clip these to both ropes coming off of the nose here. The reason is if you clip them here, it's going to slide if they walk forward. If you clip them here, same concept, it's going to slide or droop down. See how low that gets to her nose? She doesn't really like me doing that. She's telling me about it. But when you clip them here, they can only slide back so far, okay? So I like to clip them there. And I'm going to go ahead and clip the other side. And show you what I'll do with this rope as well. So again, I want to clip to just behind the knot. That's important to remember. If you clip in front of the knot, it's not going to do anything, right? I just want to be sure everyone knows that. So clip behind, right? Make sure it's clipped, it's locked in, it's secure. Now, if you have a rope halter, obviously with the webbed halters, they tend to have the little square metal piece here. They're webbed, they're very different than this one. So you'll have a place to clip these. In this case, I'm just speaking on rope halters. Quite a few rope halters have a clip that you would clip to this piece of the halter like this. Mm-hmm. Mine doesn't. So I have my rope lead that attaches to this. I don't take it off because it's very difficult to get off. So if you have a halter and lead rope like this, safest thing to do, there would be a couple of different things. Safest thing to do is you can just toss it over their head like this. It's not looped, it's not wrapped around, and by wrapped around I mean like this, because worst case scenario, your horse gets loose, they break something goes wrong, worst case, right? If they take off and you can't catch them, this is around their neck. If this starts to get lower and lower, they could step on it, in turn potentially hurting, choking, etc. Right. So you don't want to loop it, you just want to lay it. Now a lot of times my horses will stand here in the cross ties, and they might put their head down and this may come up. It doesn't really matter where it goes, and it doesn't really matter if it falls as long as no one trips over it. But again, I like it here. The only other thing I do sometimes, if my rope is long enough, is take it over here. I know. Take it over here, come up like that. You're not tying it. It's just literally looped. So just out of the way. It's just out of the way. Okay? Okay, worst case scenario, right? It comes undone. The horse pulls back, they pull out, it just comes right off. Great. And then with these ropes, just want to be sure that they're not too long. Dutch just took a step forward there, so they became longer. But we don't want them too tight either. So it depends on where your horse stands, but I'd say that's probably appropriate. She has a little bit of play. I don't want her to feel trapped. And I don't want her to be able to have too much play where she can walk off or back up too much or turn, get tangled in the rope. So make sure they're not too long. Yeah, this one's out of the way and you'll be good to go. So just want to go over how to properly put the rope through the blocker tie ring. So this type of blocker tie ring has a nice magnet, so it's pretty firm. It's not going to just flop down. Some of these blocker tie rings don't have a magnet. So regardless of magnetized or not, the important thing to know is that, like I said, that tongue goes to the back. We're going to feed it through just like that. So rope to rope, you open up the tongue, slide it through, and then it goes over, okay? The nice thing about these, of course, is that there's that give or that friction. So worst case, a horse does pull back. They have give, but they won't break anything. So at Leatherman Lane, these ropes will be provided. This setup will already be here, okay? So the rope will be through the blocker tie ring. The blocker tie ring will be with the tongue to the back. This clip should be clipped to the eye bolt next to the tie ring.
So it's not on the ground.
So that it's not on the ground. We don't want these ropes to get dirty. We don't want anyone to trip on them, especially with the loop here. So make sure it's clipped. And then when you're ready, you unclip this, go back this way, and we'll clip to the rope halter in this case, like we talked about. And then that's it. Right? So then if you get out here, you use your own rope, or these aren't here for some reason, then just like I showed earlier, you'll want to, let's say this isn't here, this is your own rope. So you show up with your own rope. We can even attach it to the halter here, slide right through and clip, okay? And make sure it's not too long. We don't want this to be too drooped. I've seen way too many instances where ropes look like this. That's dangerous. Horse could step over it, they might dance, they might turn around. It's not safe for you either. I could forget about it and trip over it.
Yep. Make
sure the ropes are at the proper level.
And you're just feeding that through and pulling it with the other side.
So I am just feeding it through this way. So if you can see, I'm lifting, I'm relieving pressure, if you will, and sliding it through.
Gotcha.
If your rope is really long, you could also just go ahead and fix it this way, shorten it up, and then clip, instead of having to drag the rope through. Because all of our horses, of course, are of different size and length, so you have to set it to your horse each time.
Great.
Again, when you're done, unclip. I'm going to clip this here. I'm going to unclip this side. Unclip. Put that there. And then I take the horse. My halter's right here already. Right? Take the horse and we're done.
Now, would you leave a horse cross-tied in these? Say you had to go to the restroom or go grab something out of the tack room. Are they safe enough to do that?
No.
Okay.
So I would not leave my horse unattended. By unattended, I mean without a body present. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't mean, you know, if Katie's over there and I need to run to the restroom, that I'm going to say, hey, Katie, can you keep an eye on my horse? In this case, in my scenario, Katie's a few fences away from me. If something happened with Duchess here and she pulled back and needed assistance, or she took off, I'm in the restroom, right? Katie can't jump over the fence to get here. So what I would do is have a body present, or don't leave your horse cross-tied. In addition to the blocker tie rings with the ropes that are here, there are also cross ties. I would not recommend you tie your horse in cross ties if you know that they will pull back, or if they have a tying issue. In my opinion, if my horse is pulling back, personally I don't want to be in the vicinity, because I've seen enough bad accidents to just get out of the way. Things can happen. I mean, even with Duchess, I've had her for 10 years. I know that she tends to be what I call a pullback horse. But she'll stand tied nicely for a long time, and then one day, I don't know, something happens and it sets her off, she'll pull back. I never tie Duchess except with the blocker tie rings, or just in general a ground tire. That's for me. But if you know that about your horse, I wouldn't recommend cross tying them without your presence, especially if maybe you have a new horse that you're unsure of. We'll see how it goes. That's not usually the best way to go about it. So that's just my note. I wouldn't leave your horse, especially cross-tied here, or cross-tied in general, without your presence. But even then, if you have any worry that they will pull back, don't cross tie them, okay?
Okay.
That's why we have the blocker tie rings as cross ties in general, so that you have that option, that safer option. So with a cross tie, I see this happen a lot, and I want to make sure everyone's aware. This quick release goes to the eye bolt, okay? It doesn't go to the horse's face. Why? Okay, so if I clip my horse here and she pulls back, although I said I'd get out of the way, if I'm able to, I could reach up here and quick release her. If my horse is cross-tied and they start to pull back, like I said, I don't put the quick release clip here, because if they're pulling back, I don't want to reach up at their head when their head's way up here and they're potentially freaking out, right? I can't. I mean, you quite literally can't, and it's more dangerous. So, again, we clip the quick release clip, to the eye bolt, and then we clip this to the halter. And quick release, clip to the eye bolt already, and then this clip, we'll clip with the away, see that? We don't want these too loose, so adjust it for your horse, okay? In her case, at this moment, these are a pretty good distance, but what you notice is her pasture's over there, so she wants to go that way. So she's telling me that, hey, I'm done with this, I want to go that way. In the case that these are too long, she can start to move her hindquarters around, pull on this, you know, some get freaked out. That's how she gets in trouble. That's why we don't leave. As long as I'm here, I can correct her for that. I can move her body back over. So that's why we don't leave them. Never leave them once. And then when you're done with these, you just clip them back up so that they're out of the way. No one's going to step on or get tangled in. Unclip, and then make sure you clip it back to the eye bolt where everything's connected, so it's not hanging down, it's not drooping, nobody's going to get tangled in it, and they're out of the way. You can clip them to this with one eye bolt. You don't have to use it in a cross tie scenario. However, you need to keep in mind, if there are two horses in here, you cannot use one. The reason you can't use one is because your horse might want to drift over here and get in this horse's space, and if they're only clipped with one, that allows them to do that because they have all this free rein. Okay, so if you're going to clip them with one and there's no other horse here, we want this to be shorter than when it's in a cross tie scenario. In this case, I'm actually going to clip this to the middle. I don't clip to one side or the other because that can get them in trouble. I can show you that real quick. If I clip over here, because that's what I normally do with the cross ties, if she were to look that way and whether her head was down and she looks up, there's the problem there. Over here, not so much of a problem, but I like to clip to this center just to make sure nothing's going to happen. Okay, so center, you're going to have them tied a little bit closer. So again, not too tight. We don't need it. We don't need their head up here, but I don't want them long enough to be able to put their head on the ground and eat, and I don't want them to get wrapped in it. The other thing to note when they're clipped with one in a scenario like this where there's no fence line in front of them is that they could wrap themselves around it. So I'm not going to show you with my horse, but say she dances over here and comes over here and she wants to look at her friends, and then maybe she wants to go this way. Well, now she's wrapped. This won't allow a slide, if you notice. Now I'm not as strong as a horse, but I can't slide that. The reason is because of this corner on the 6x6. So that's why, again, we don't leave our horses, because they can get into scenarios that they're unaware of, freaks them out, they can hurt themselves, etc. All right. So in the arena, there are these new blocker tie rings on two posts. There's going to be this post and then one down there. The way you're going to tie is you want to make sure that this tongue on the blocker tie ring is facing the post, you're gonna take your rope. So we got the rope goes to the halter and then the tail. You're gonna squeeze them together like that. Open the tongue up, it's magnetized on the back. Slide it through. The tongue comes through the rope. You don't want to let this be too low, okay? So you want to slide that through, and I'm just pressing, I'm relieving pressure here, sliding with the rope, or you can completely undo this and slide that way. And then you don't want to leave this on the ground like that. Really, they probably won't get tangled, but we want to be worst case scenario people. So we're going to put this behind, in this case, in the arena. We want to put that behind. If these tie rings are taken one day, you get out to the barn and you do need to utilize an area to tie your horse. And these, like I said, these are already taken. You can walk your horse over to a post. It doesn't have a sprinkler on it. Sure, we don't want to break these. If you loop around this, it can break this. That becomes very expensive. But you can come to a post like this, loop your rope around. That's all you do. We don't tie. Even the daisy chaining is called hard tying. Hard tying means if your horse pulls back, there's no give. And I don't know if you can see, even just my little 100-pound, probably putting 40 pounds of pressure on this, is rocking that post. And mind you, the whole arena. So worst case scenario, your horse does pull back, they're hard tied. This is going with them. Okay, I've seen it happen, not in this same scenario, but I've seen a gate go with a horse that pulled back. So we want to loop once. If you have to run to the restroom or run and grab, tack, whatever it might be, and you need to leave your horse tied, this is the only appropriate way to leave your horse tied. What they can do is get out of it if they really want to. We don't mind that, because that means they're not hard tied, they're not going to hurt themselves, pull on anything. They might just end up wandering around the arena. A couple other options you have. So that's if you're by yourself, you can leave them like this, run to the restroom, whatever. Or you can just unclip them if you want them to wander around, as long as all the gates are shut. That's fine. You could throw them in a stall if there's an available stall, a round pen, or if you're here with other people and you don't want to, in that case, I would recommend you let your horse wander around the arena, then ask one of the other boarders to hold them. So there's other options, but make sure you're not tying them. That you can get in a lot of bad scenarios. I personally prefer to do this instead of this, because, and I've seen this happened with Duchess 2 weeks ago. She got a little startled by something. She started pulling and this slid. It actually slid up off the post. Okay, and then she was free. She's learned not to pull back and run. So she didn't set back, but she pulled. It came off and she stood there just like this. If you do that here, really all that's going to happen is they're just going to keep pulling the rope through. Not bad, but I'd prefer it up here so that it can slip off, especially if you leave them by themselves. And then just like with the tie ring, you typically have all this slack to get the slack off the ground so they don't step on it, you don't trip over it. Same, you want to put it back here. Again, it's not tied, it's not hooked, nobody can get tangled. That's the safest place for the rope, safest place to loop this rope around. So the reason we use the tie ring instead of hard tying is that in the event they do pull back, become spooked, this will slide. And what the tie ring does is that it doesn't give a release, but it adds friction. So when you're adding friction and they're pulling back, this pressure at their pull will not release until they stop. Okay, so as they're pulling back, typically a horse won't pull back, to the point that this rope ends. Mm-hmm. But when they're pulling back, there's pressure here, so they're not getting a release. And so the release comes when they come back, they feel that, they hit that pressure and they stop and step forward. So if they're hard tied, they can pull this down and drag it with them. There will be a release of pressure, but in a bad way. Gotcha. Right? Okay. They're gonna realize that they broke that, they got away, they're terrified. then they're going to keep doing it.
So that's the release of pressure. It stopped. She came off of it.
Yeah.
She's good.
So then you'll come back over here. Your horse pulled back. She's coming back. We do want to make sure that she's not going to do that again. So we take that slack back out, do it again. But what she realized is there wasn't a release of pressure when she panicked, but when she stopped, the release came.
And then she stepped forward to it.
Yes.
Got
she
it.
stepped in forward.
Love it.
Yep.